So we haven't spoken about Biden's border patrol policy in a little while, ever since that massive flood of child migrants from the southern border. Ever since that was a really big thing, we haven't touched on this, but I think it's time to touch on it again, because as the humanitarian crisis when it comes to COVID and other instances around the world kick up, the amount of migrants coming to our borders ticks up as well. And it's starting to become a very big problem for at least the Biden administration, who seems to not want to do very much about it. Our border policy for a very long time has been incredibly bad, very strict, very inhumane. Under from Clinton to today, it's been extremely inhumane, with the borderline unconstitutional conditions, and the cruelness in which we treat the people who come to our border seeking refugee has been nothing but demonstrable. And I think that's the nice way of putting it. But it's getting worse. There's a little country, it's called Haiti. Now, Haiti has been rife with a lot of problems for a very long time. I don't think this is new to anyone, but Haiti is experiencing more problems at the moment due to things like climate change and also internal struggles in the country that has led a lot of people to want to escape the country and move on to other places where they can be accepted and have a life with themselves and their family in a dignified way. Biden doesn't want that to happen. Biden is treating the Haitian refugees incredibly cruelly. And we'll be looking at some of that today. So the U.S. removes migrants from Texas border camp, begins flights to Haiti. So basically what's happened is that Haitian immigrants have been crossing the border into the U.S. and like setting up little camps and hoping to apply for asylum so they can get into the asylum process. Because once again, if you remember the laws, you have to be on American soil to say that you need to seek asylum. You can't be in Mexico and say you need to seek asylum. You have to be on American soil to say you need to seek asylum. But the thing is, you can't be on American soil without like going through like the channels that are like extremely hard to get through, a very long line. Some places you even have to pay up to like $1,000 USD to even like apply. That was a law under the under the Trump administration. So typically the way that people do it, they just cross the border and say, hey, I would like to apply for asylum. We take them into the system and then we process them there. Biden doesn't care about that shit anymore. U.S. border agents began expelling plane loads of mostly Haitian migrants from a large makeshift camp they had set up after waiting across the Rio Grande, separating Mexico and the United States, with reparation flights arriving on Haiti on Sunday. U.S. authorities have moved more than 3,300 migrants since Friday from the Del Rio, Texas, and announced a newly daily scheduled flights to the Haitian capital, where officials expressed concerns on Sunday of potential large influx of returning migrants in the next few days. At least 100 migrants, including families with small children, have crossed back into Mexico from under a bridge on Sunday evening. So this is what's basically going on. The sprawling camp under the international bridge has attracted about 12,000 migrants at one point and has marked a new challenge for U.S. authorities, who sought to reduce the flow of Central Americans and now hundreds of Haitians who have fled the rampant poverty, gang violence, and seemingly nonstop natural disasters back home. So it's a lot of people are moving. Now, what's moving a lot of people from Haiti right now is, if you didn't know, back in July, if I remember correctly, the president was assassinated, and there were like two people who claim that they're the ones in power right now, that are going to succeed him until like a new election can come through. So the Haitian government has been awful. They've been hit with multiple hurricanes. There was a massive earthquake. There's like rampant gang violence, and there's extreme amounts of poverty. There's almost no country to return to at this moment. So that's why we're seeing a massive influx of Haitian immigrants and migrants and refugees basically trying to come in and trying to make a life for themselves, because not only is their country completely destroyed, they're also, since a lot of them are black, as we would call them black, a lot of them are facing a lot of racism as well in like Central and South America, because anti-blackness racism is still a thing in non-white countries. So they're like, hey, we need somewhere to go because they're being terrorized in these Central and South American countries. They don't have a home to return to in Haiti. So what are you going to do? The next best thing that you got is try to make it into America. So that's the best thing that they can do. There's no safety in Haiti. There's no work. Someone said 35-year-old Haitian that's camped out. Later on Sunday, the first 3 flights have arrived, carrying 327 migrants to return. So not only are they trying to force these people out of the US, the way they're doing so is absolutely barbaric. And you can see like a little picture here of what Border Patrol is doing. If you see this is a stirrup that the Border Patrol agents are using as a whip to terrorize the migrants and force them back, knock them down with their horses, hit them with the stirrups that they're using as whips, and telling them to cross back over the Rio Grande. And they say they're just going to try and cross back again because there's nothing there. And Haiti is having some trouble even getting these people back in. They have no place. They have no place to go once they're back in Haiti. You can't find any work. You have poor access to food and water. It's just like an awful condition. There's no choice. You just have to try and keep trying to get in because there's nothing that you could possibly do back in Haiti. And President Biden has kept a rule in place, although he exempt unaccompanied minors in his administration has not been expelling most families. Biden promised a more humane immigration approach than his predecessor. So here's the really big thing. And I would consider this a massive lie and a disgusting treatment of immigrants by the Biden administration. And we'll get into like how bad it actually is. So he kept in place a law by the Trump administration that basically overturns all of the law that we had on the books at the moment that says once you're on American soil, you can apply for refugee status. And so we'll take you into the system. We'll take care of you. And then you go to the proper channels. And then you could be like deported if they don't accept you, which, you know, that's a topic for another day. But like at the same time, I mean, at least it's more humane than what's going on now. Right now, he kept a law in place that says Border Patrol agents can just kick them out of the fucking country without any reprisal, without any due process, without anything. They can basically treat them as like war combatants. They do basically everything besides just shoot them on the spot to get them out of the country. And they're saying you're not allowed to seek asylum at all, even though the only way to really seek asylum is to be on American soil. And so these people are like packed into small border cities on Mexico, and now even Mexico's starting to crack down on them. But the way that they're trying to force these people back into force people to get back into Mexico and cross the Rio Grande again is actually it's horribly disgusting. So CW, this video is cringe. Let me play you what's basically been happening on the border under President Biden. I'm going to take a more humane strategy to border than Trump did. She's like hitting them and knocking them over with the horses.
No! Hey, you use your women? This is why your country, because you use your women for this.
So I'm not sure if you heard that, but this like disgusting Border Patrol officer is like in front of cameras, in front of reporters, mind you, talking to these Haitians and going, you use your women. I don't even know what the fuck that means. This is why your country's shit, because you use your women like this. It definitely wasn't the earthquakes or the international interference in their election processes or their history of like slavery. No, it's definitely because they hate women, apparently.
Your women? This is why your country, because you use your women for this.
They're acting like fucking cattle ranchers and slave drivers. They couldn't give a shit less. This isn't a slavery reenactment. Well, don't tell them that. And I'm not did you fucking see that? This guy actually tried to run down like a 12-year-old girl with his horse. Look at that. The only reason that girl didn't get trampled by this horse was because she was able to jump out of the way. They are actually trying to run over children with horses. They hate these people so much. They think they're so subhuman that they're going to run them over with horses just for crossing into the country to try and, this is how, just so you know, this is how you follow the laws. I've said it before. This is how you follow the laws. You have to cross into America to seek asylum. This is it. This is how this works.
You go that way.
The actions came during the immigrant crisis at the southern border. They left over 15,000 migrants and asylum seekers. We have a hard time. Our families send us money, but we can't eat. We have children, but don't have diapers. Because there is a lot of children, and they're only removing the single parents. And the children are left alone, just imagine. In recent days, thousands of mostly migrant people have reached the U.S. border. And they're fleeing Haiti's current turbulence due to natural disasters and presidential assassination. Yeah, we talked about this. They're saying a prayer here.
Al lugar donde tú quieres, que podamos cruzar y llegar a la frontera y por qué no, Padre, llegar al otro lado con nuestros familiares y tener una mejor vida. ¡Vamos!
So yeah, he's like swinging around his stirrup like a whip and like fucking hitting people. And he hits this guy. He fucking whips him with his stirrup, and the guy fucking collapses. Just disgusting. Awful. So basically, instead of like trying to take care of these people, they formed a barricade and are like torturing people who are over there with like basically nothing. And here's some more stories from some people over there. I don't know how I will survive, said Ms. Brazil, 35. It was the worst decision I ever taken, and this is where I ended up. This is not where I wanted to go. Only now, Ms. Brazil's family has been destroyed by the earthquake. Her mother and her 6 siblings are living in the street, she said. She's alone with a small child in a backpack with all her belongings, and no prospect of a job. These people have absolutely nothing, and this is how the Biden administration, this is how they treat these people who want to come to our border. Just so you know, he promised that there wasn't going to be stuff like this at the border anymore. That we'd take a more humane approach to the border crossings, but I don't know. This is looking a lot like what we experienced for the last 4 years. I have to tell you that much. Do we have a country? One woman asked. They killed the president. We don't have a country. Look at the state of this country. And not even talking about that. We can talk about, like, once again, the pandemic is still raging. These people need to go somewhere, but instead of trying to help them out, they torture them and send them back over the border and wait for them to starve to death rather than actually trying to help people. Why can't we have a humane system where we actually try and take care of people, put people's needs and humanitarian aid first, and not try to use the pandemic as a cudgel to try and kill people who are on the verge of death already. So obviously, with how disgusting all of this looks, you would imagine the Biden administration had a couple of words for what was said. And remember when all the libs were coming out and saying like, oh my gosh, Jen Psaki is so based. Jen Psaki is so cool. Unlike those other press secretaries who were so cringe. I'm so glad girl boss Jen Psaki is here. Let's see what Jen had to say about all this.
Jen, a follow-up question on Haiti. There are photographs and reports of border agents on horseback using what appear to be whips on Haitian migrants. Does the administration view that as an appropriate tactic? Can you speak to that? There are people who are upset about it.
Yeah, understandably so. I've seen some of the footage. I don't have the full context. I can't imagine what context would make that appropriate, but I don't have additional details. And certainly, I don't have additional context, April. I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.
So listen, it seems really bad, but I don't have the context of it. Listen, what if he was like, what if the Haitian migrants all came up to the Border Patrol officers and they're like, whip me, daddy. And they all just kept screaming, whip me, daddy. And so he was just trying to be nice. And that's why he did it. And not because he's a cruel, disgusting human being who has no care for other human life. If they're in his way. Yeah, definitely. Totally, bud. I know. let me tell you this. So just so you know, there's still, when Biden wrote that he's not, that the law that he kept in place, that the Trump administration put through, that lets them expel migrants no matter what, even if they try to apply for refugee status, it doesn't apply to single children. So basically what these Haitian migrants are starting to do, and this is seen like a massive uptick in more like unaccompanied minors, these Haitian immigrants are having to give everything that they have to their children, and basically send their children across the border, and hope that they're going to be taken care of, because they legally can't expel unaccompanied children, even though, I don't know, they'll definitely, from some things that we've heard from the immigrant system that we have, they can do a lot of other really bad things to children. We made a video about that a little while ago. So it's not like those children are safe, but they can be turned out of the country just for who they are. So now this is, in effect, separating families again, because people aren't allowed, because the parents will be expelled with the kids, so they're just going to have to be like, I'm sorry, but this is where we're going to have to part ways for now, because they can't allow their kids to go back to the life that they were forced to live anymore, which is incredibly sad.
I want to follow up on the question about Haitians and it's specifically these photos that are surfacing on Border Patrol agents seemingly using whips. I know you said that there's no context that it would be seen as inappropriate, so the question really is, why would this be happening under the Biden administration? Is this going to stop? What would I wonder sort of what are going to be the consequences if what we're seeing is what we're seeing?
I mean, Yamiche, it's all good questions. We just saw this footage. It's horrible to watch. I just have to get more information on it.
So apparently, this massive story that's been raging all day of the Border Patrol like torturing migrants at the border. Apparently she hasn't decided to talk to Biden about it, or Biden hasn't said anything about it, and nobody in the White House has talked about it at all. They just kind of pretend it doesn't exist. So Jen had to like watch the video and be like, yeah, I mean, that sucks, but I don't know, fucking rest in piss, I guess. We'll get to it later, is basically the Biden administration's response right now.
Again, April, I don't have more information on it. I've also seen the video. I can't imagine what the scenario is where that would be appropriate. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but we've just seen the footage earlier this morning.
On the photo, I know you said that you're still assessing it, but just to add, if this is what we see, is it the president's stance or the White House's stance that whoever these border agents are using what seems to be whips on migrants, that they would be fired or at least never be able to do that again?
Of course they should never be able to do it again. I don't know what the circumstances would be. It's obviously horrific, the footage. I don't have any more information on it, so let me venture to do that, and we'll see if there's more to convey.
Why didn't she do that before? Why is this happening now? She's like, well, let me think about that, I guess. What the fuck are you talking about? So this is what the Biden administration has been caught in, and the Haitian immigrants can't really do anything. It's even worse. And the situation gets even worse now because they're not being treated well in Mexico either. Basically, what's happening in the Mexico City that they're in, basically that state that Mexico that they're in, trying to cross the border in, basically shut down all of their movement, and it started to close down on them and basically say, listen, our state is pretty full. You guys are gonna have to like get the fuck out of here. They started kicking people out. They started stopping a lot of their movement. They started forcing some people to go to like either Chile or Brazil. It's just been really bad. Here it is, like Mexican authorities cracked down on Haitians. For the past week, hundreds and sometimes thousands of migrants have moved openly around, how do I pronounce this? We'll just call this CA for now. But on Sunday morning, the streets were quiet. The bus station, bustling with Haitian arrivals in recent days, was nearly empty. Mexican officials activated at least four checkpoints in this state to prevent undocumented migrants from traveling north of CA. The state prosecutor said that the actions were coordinated with Mexico's National Guard Army, state and federal police. While migration checkpoints are commonplace in Mexico, the crackdown in the city was in direct response to the large amount of migrants arriving. This is a small town, not a big city. For many people who show up here, these big groups, people are starting to get nervous. So nothing happened, okay? These Haitian refugees weren't like causing real problems. They were just nervous. They just didn't like them there. They were like, "Hey, these people are making us a little nervous. We should just fucking ban them." Like, "Oh, you're here with your children. You can't find food or water, and you're starving, and you're trying to escape turmoil in your country. Sure, but your existence is a little bit of a nuisance. So, have you ever decided to fuck off?" And so that's what they're doing to them there. So now these Haitian refugees are stuck in a rock in a hard place where they can't go into the U.S. and they can't go into Mexico, and so they're just suffering. And until something breaks, I'm not sure what will break. What we hope to happen is that Biden will loosen up the immigration policies to finally let these people in and seek refugee status. That would be the best thing to have happen. But seeing as Jen Psaki didn't know anything about this down from Biden or how he felt about it, or where they're going to go from this, besides, it's not really a good look. We don't know what's going to happen. You're right. The unnecessary cruelty is just going to keep going until something breaks. And more likely than not, I'm sorry, probably what's going to break is going to be the migrants, and a lot of them are just going to start dying, or something along those lines, until something changes. And when that will be, how good will it be? We just don't know yet. But until then, Biden seems to be echoing a lot of what we saw on the border from Trump.